3 men in fake uniforms pounded on my door at sunrise, demanding to arrest my wife. But what they didn't know? My wife is the county sheriff. The pounding on my front door was so violent I thought it might come off the hinges. "Mr. Rivera, open up. Your wife is under arrest." The voice thundered through the glass panes, rattling them as though a storm itself was demanding entry. I stood frozen in my robe, socks still on my feet, coffee mug in my hand, the steam curling lazily upward. 20 quiet minutes into my morning, serenity shattered into chaos. My heart slammed against my ribs, breath caught in my throat. At first, I thought maybe I was still dreaming. Maybe this was one of those nightmares that blurred so hard into reality you didn't know which side you were on. But the fists hammering the wood were real. The threat was real. And when I moved cautiously toward the side window, peering through the sliver of glass, I saw them. 3 men. They stood shoulder to shoulder on my porch like a tactical team. Broad chests, rigid stances, navy polyester shirts tucked into heavy-duty tactical pants, boots planted wide. Sunglasses shielded their eyes, though the sun had barely cleared the horizon. Bold white block letters were printed across their backs in all caps. HOA Cop. If you squinted, you might mistake them for real officers. Maybe that was the point. But I wasn't half asleep. I knew fake when I saw it. And my stomach sank like a stone when my eyes landed on the man in front, the tallest one, his lips already curled into that smug, self-righteous grin I'd come to despise. Trent Mercer, my neighbor, the man who strutted through the block like a self-proclaimed general, barking about lawn lengths, trash can placement, and HOA regulations as though they were law carved into stone. I cracked the door open, careful to keep the chain latched. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded, voice tighter than I wanted it to be. Trent stepped forward, slow and theatrical, resting his hand on the pistol at his hip. He made sure I saw it. The message was clear. He thought he had the power here. "Step aside, sir. We've had official reports of violations. Your wife needs to come with us for questioning." Behind me, I felt a presence move closer. My wife, Camille, still tying her hair back, calm as if she'd just woken up to the sound of birds instead of jackboots on the porch. She didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Her voice, when it came, cut the morning air like steel. "Do you have a warrant?" Trent's smirk faltered. Just a flicker, but I caught it. One of the men behind him coughed, trying not to laugh. The other shifted on his heels, glancing nervously down the street where blinds and curtains had already begun to twitch open. The neighborhood was awake, drawn to the spectacle on my porch. "You heard me," Camille repeated, folding her arms, eyes locked like a hawk on Trent. "Do you have a search warrant, an arrest warrant, anything?" The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Trent straightened his shoulders, trying to drag the moment back under his control. "Neighborhood security is no joke, Mrs. Rivera. You can come with us the easy way or the hard way." Camille's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't move, didn't blink. "Daniel," she said calmly, her voice steady as stone, "call the sheriff's office. Report 3 men impersonating officers on our porch." I swallowed, pulse spiking, my hand twitching toward my phone. Trent's jaw tightened, his sneer snapping back into place, but his eyes betrayed him. For the first time, he looked uncertain. "No," Camille said again, louder this time. "The mistake is yours." The porch went dead quiet. The kind of silence that felt like a coiled spring, ready to snap. My heart pounded in my ears, and I knew deep down this was only the beginning. Trent's jaw worked like he was grinding stone between his teeth. His hand brushed the pistol grip at his hip, slow, deliberate, meant to intimidate. His 2 companions shifted uneasily behind him, their tough guy act already cracking. The one on the left avoided eye contact entirely, staring down the street as more curtains slid open and neighbors peeked out, cell phones raised. The other's lips twitched like he wanted to say something but didn't have the courage. "You're making a big mistake," Trent growled finally, his voice low and poisonous. "No," Camille replied, her tone flat, firm, and absolute. "The mistake is yours." The air grew heavier, thick with tension. I felt it in my chest, in the back of my throat. Every muscle in my body screamed to brace, to move, to do something. One wrong twitch could set everything off like a match to gasoline. I glanced at Camille, but she was ice. her gaze locked on Trent with the kind of authority that didn't need to be shouted. Trent puffed his chest, desperate to reclaim control. "We're authorized to remove her for questioning. Step aside, Daniel, or you'll regret it." I swallowed, fingers slick against my phone. My instinct told me to shield my wife, but something deeper told me not to interfere. Camille wasn't just holding her ground. She was building a wall Trent couldn't scale. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them until only the porch air separated her from his trembling bravado. Her voice dropped into a tone I'd heard only in courtrooms and crime scenes, the kind that carried weight no one could ignore. "Trent Mercer, you and your men are in violation of federal law. Impersonating an officer is a felony under 18 U.S. Code 9112. That's 3 years in prison per offense. And right now, you've racked up 3. Her words hit like sledgehammers. One of the lackeys shifted back a step, his eyes wide, throws, at bobbing. The other's hand dropped entirely from his belt, the swagger gone. Neighbors whispered from across the street, their voices carrying on the morning air. Phones tilted higher. "You don't scare me," Trent spat, though his voice cracked around the edges. Sweat dotted his temple. "You hide behind technicalities. This neighborhood is falling apart, and I'm the one keeping order. Somebody has to enforce the rules." Camille tilted her head, the faintest smile curling her lips. "Enforce? You think waving a fake badge and stomping around in cargo pants makes you law enforcement?" She shook her head slowly, her eyes glinting with something sharp. "Let me educate you. My name isn't just Mrs. Rivera." She paused, savoring the moment before dropping it like a hammer. "It's Sheriff Camille Rivera." The declaration hung in the air like thunder after lightning. For a heartbeat, the whole porch froze. Trent's smirk cracked wide open, his confidence draining from his face like a busted pipe. His lackeys gaped openly, their swagger disintegrating before our eyes. I felt my chest swell, pride and vindication rushing through me. Camille wasn't just a woman who knew the law, she was the law. My wife, the county sheriff, standing nose to nose with a neighbor drunk on fake power. "Sheriff?" one of the men stammered. Camille pulled her wallet from her pocket, flipping it open. The badge inside gleamed under the newborn sunlight, a polished blade that cut the last threads of Trent's authority. "You've got about 30 seconds before real deputies arrive," she said calmly, "because my husband already made the call." Right on cue, the wail of sirens pierced the distance, faint at first but growing louder with every breath. Curtains along the block fluttered as more neighbors stepped out to watch. Trent's face went pale. His act, his whole persona, started to crumble. But I knew Trent Mercer well enough to know he wasn't going to fold without a fight. The sirens drew closer, a sharp wail slicing through the morning stillness. Trent's face twisted, caught between rage and fear. He looked over his shoulder as though he might find an escape route in the neat row of mailboxes and trimmed hedges. But the eyes of the neighborhood were locked on him now, every curtain and phone camera recording his downfall. "This isn't over," he snarled, his voice trembling under the weight of reality. "Oh, it's over," Camille said, her tone low and final. "The second you put those uniforms on, you wrote your own ending." The strobing red and blue lights spilled across the cul-de-sac as 2 sheriff's cruisers rounded the corner and screeched to a halt at the curb. Dust puffed up as tires skidded, and then doors flew open. 2 deputies stepped out, hands already resting on their duty belts, eyes narrowed as they sized up the scene on our porch. Trent's bravado cracked. His lackeys broke first, dropping their act like dead weight. One raised his hand skyward, backing down the steps as he stammered apologies. The other let a crowbar clatter to the porch, the metal ringing like a bell that marked the end of their charade. "Hands where I can see them!" one deputy barked, voice sharp enough to cut glass. The men scrambled, palms high. But Trent was too stubborn, too deep in the fantasy he had built. He stood stiff, chest puffed, his hand twitching near the pistol grip strapped to his hip. Camille saw it. She always saw it before anyone else. "Don't," she warned, voice cold as steel. But Trent wasn't listening. He wanted to salvage something, dignity, power, fear, anything. He reached. In a blur, Camille moved. The door swung wide on its chain, and she surged forward like a storm, her hand locked onto Trent's wrist, twisting hard and sharp. The sound of tendons straining filled the porch as he yelped in shock. A heartbeat later, his bow. Die hit the planks face first, wood thudding under his weight. The neighborhood gasped in unison. Phones tilted higher, capturing every second. Camille's knee pressed into his back, pinning him clean. Her voice rang out steady, official, and merciless. Trent Mercer, you are under arrest for criminal trespass, impersonating an officer, harassment, and attempted forced entry into a private residence. Each charge landed heavier than the last, like iron chains clamping shut. The deputies surged up the porch, one of them snapping cuffs onto Trent's wrists, while the other secured his lackeys. You can't do this, Trent wheezed, cheek grinding against the boards. His face was blotchy red, sweat pooling at his temples. He looked less like the self-proclaimed enforcer of order and more like a child caught with stolen candy. Camille leaned down, her voice low enough for him alone, but loud enough for the crowd to hear. You tried to break into a sheriff's house. You think you're above the law? You're about to learn what the law really feels like. The deputies yanked Trent upright, his arms bound behind him. He stumbled as they marched him toward the cruiser. His neighbors, our neighbors, watched in awe. Some whispered, others outright cheered. The so-called tyrant of the HOA, the man who strutted like a warlord, now shuffled in cuffs like a petty criminal. The slam of the cruiser's door was final, the sound echoing down the street like a gavel. And standing beside Camille, I felt something shift in the cul-de-sac. People weren't just watching a man fall, they were realizing the truth. Trent hadn't been the authority here. He never was. The real law had always lived quietly among them, and today it had spoken. The crowd lingered even after the cruisers pulled away, buzzing with energy like a hive that had just been rattled. Phones lowered slowly, whispers weaving into each other. For months, maybe years, Trent Mercer had lorded over this street, his voice louder than anyone else's, his demands more aggressive than the HOA's rulebook ever intended. He thrived on intimidation. But now the neighborhood had seen him stripped of every ounce of false authority, shoved into the back of a real patrol car. Camille straightened, tucking her badge back into her pocket. She brushed her hands together like she was dusting off dirt, calm, composed, untouchable. To the neighbors, it looked effortless, like pinning down a 6-foot bully and reciting his charges was just another line item in her morning routine. A man from 2 houses down stepped closer, hat in hand, his voice low with awe. Sheriff, we had no idea. Camille gave him a small nod. I don't broadcast my job when I'm at home. I just want to live like everyone else. But when someone crosses the line, she glanced toward where Trent's cruiser had turned the corner. It becomes my job whether I want it or not. The murmurs thickened. Relief mixed with admiration, and for once, unity replaced the fear Trent had sown. A few even clapped, tentative at first, then louder until the sound rippled across the street. It wasn't celebration. It was release. I slipped my arm around Camille's shoulders, my pride impossible to contain. You didn't just defend us, I whispered. You freed them. She leaned into me, just enough that I felt the strength under her calm exterior. Bullies always fall, sooner or later. That night, after the adrenaline had drained and the house finally felt quiet again, we sat together on the porch. The same boards where Trent had been pinned only hours earlier now felt like holy ground, claimed not by false orcers but by truth. The sheriff's department had confirmed Trent and his men were being booked on multiple charges: impersonating officers, trespassing, harassment. None of them were getting out anytime soon, but the real victory wasn't the paperwork or the court dates ahead. It was the shift in the neighborhood. For the first time in a long time, people weren't afraid of Trent Mercer's shadow. They waved when they walked past. They smiled. Some even dropped by to thank Camille personally. The fear was gone, replaced by something stronger: respect. As the stars blinked awake overhead, Camille sipped her tea, her badge resting on the table beside her. She didn't need to say anything. Her presence was enough. I thought back to that moment when Trent had demanded she come with him, the easy way or the hard way. The irony cut deep now, because the truth was simple. There had only ever been one way, Camille's way, the way of the law. And as long as Sheriff Camille Rivera lived in this neighborhood, no fake cop, no bully, and no HOA tyrant would ever hold power again.